the Pubco Studios in Oklahoma City. You're watching the Press Row. I'm Jenny Carlson here with Barry Tramel. Press Row is brought to you by Cox High-Speed Internet. It's time for our weekly inbox segment where you ask us questions and we try to provide some answers. Let's go right to the inbox, Barry, and let's start with John. John asks, would OU be better off slowing it down offensively, especially when the Sooners have injuries on defense? I know it's fun to watch the fast-paced offense, but I think the pace has hurt the Sooners overall. Could Baylor score 45 if they ran 20 fewer plays?
Well, I mean, the answer is probably not. Now, OU might not score 38 if OU's running 20 fewer plays, but I think John does have a point. And it's a point we talked about extensively when Mike Leach was down at Texas Tech, which is when you run this kind of offense, spread it out, throw it around everywhere, no huddle, really extend the game, it comes at a cost to your defense. And that comes in attitude, that comes in fatigue, that comes in number of plays you run. I think it is something Bob Stoops might have to take a look at if he wants to play 28-21 games instead of 45-38 games.
Well, but the thing is, in the two losses the Sooners have had this year, their offense hasn't really been the problem. I mean, fans would love to see an offense score every time they had the ball, but that's not going to happen. Sooners scored 38 points in both of those games, so offensively, Barry, they scored enough. Now let's remember, Baylor might have scored 62 points, 63 points in that game if they hit some of those long passes. So it's the Sooner defense that needs to be the concern at OU, not the Sooner offense right now. Let's go back to the inbox. It's time for a question from Kurt. Kurt says, I was at the Baylor game and the crowd was announced at 40,281. I'll bet Sooner fans brought around 7,000. What a pitiful support base the Bears have. Do they suck this conference dry?
I think the answer is no, and I think Kurt's a little off on his numbers.
I
think
do
there
too.
were more than
It's
7,000.
like
Yeah, I think there was more than 7,000 Sooners there. But the truth is, I don't think Baylor sucks this conference dry anymore. My only problem with Baylor ever was that they just didn't win in football or men's basketball, the two bell cows of conference finances. And now Baylor's winning. The basketball program's risen up, made the Elite Eight 2 years ago. Football team is on track to go 9-3, go to a good bowl, went to a bowl game last year. I don't have a problem with Baylor. If Baylor's competitive, I don't have a problem with the Bears.
Yeah, I don't either. And I think when you talk about importance to the conference, it really comes down to what you can do with TV sets and football. And right now, Baylor has one of the more exciting teams in the conference with Robert Griffin III. People want to tune in and watch this guy. You know, he's not yet a senior. He's got one more year. There's a lot of talk of will he or won't he leave. But Barry, people will watch the Bears play, and that's important. I don't think they're sucking a conference dry. Not this one anyway.
And let's remember, this is a league that needs teams. I mean, needs schools. They don't need to be pushing anybody out. Enough people have left.
Definitely so. All right, back to the inbox. This question comes from PJ. PJ says the OSU-Iowa State game should not have been played Friday night. I don't know if moving the game was ever discussed, but it should have been. They had been grieving all day. Barry, what do you think about that?
Well, it's a great idea, but you can't do it. I mean, you just can't do it. I don't think they could have done it if the game was in Stillwater. Yeah. I mean, it's just too much of a big business. I mean, life goes on, business goes on. Yeah, the plane crash was a horrific tragedy, but it was not a football plane crash. It was not a football coaches or players. It was other athletic department personnel. So when you sign on with ESPN, when you go all in and take all the big money, it comes at a cost, and part of that cost is you got to play the game. Yeah,
it would have been nice if maybe they could have done that. I'm just not so sure. I mean, they probably did discuss it, had some very low-level discussions about that. But I can't imagine that when you've got tens of thousands of fans, when you've got the teams are set. Obviously, OSU had been up there. They'd traveled. Would have had to stay another day. You've got the TV situation. I'm just not sure logistically, Barry, they could have done it. It would have been a nice gesture had they been able to delay that and sort of give that day, a day of grieving. But I don't really think they had that as a legitimate option.
Would the Cowboys have felt any better Saturday or Sunday?
Sitting around
would you have felt Iowa,
any better?
No, sitting around Iowa, no. That football team needed to play a football game.
Yeah. All right, back to the inbox. This one comes from Brad. Brad says, if OU beats OSU, is there a legitimate chance that the Sugar swaps out with the Fiesta in order for OU to have a new bowl destination and allow the Cowboys to trek to the Fiesta? Is it as simple as OU approving the swap?
No, it's not that simple.
Nothing is with bowl games.
All
Come
kinds of people have to approve that swap. All the bowls, including the bowls that aren't involved. It's a very complicated issue. We've seen it from time to time. But you go back to 2007, there was a lot of talk about OU and Kansas swapping. Kansas going to the Fiesta, OU down to the Orange that year. OU had just been at the Fiesta the year before, but just too many logistics, too many people to get approval from. It fell through. It's possible it could happen this year. Unlikely, though. Just a lot of people have to sign off on it.
A lot of politics going on in the bowls. We saw that a few years ago when Kansas went to the Orange Bowl instead of Missouri. That was really a product of politicking. Kansas did a better job than Missouri politicking to get there. But that's just one example. There's a lot of wrangling that would have to go on. I do think that if the Fiesta Bowl had their druthers, Barry, they would probably want another team than the Sooners. The Sooners have been there a lot. It's like Texas a few years ago in the Holiday Bowl. You just got to go somewhere else, have a different team. I'm not sure it's going to happen, though.
No, they would love to have OSU. OSU hadn't been in a major bowl since 1945. Arizona, relatively easy to get to from Oklahoma.
They'd pack the place, Barry.
20,000 Cowboy fans would go. They'd love it. So they'd love to have OSU. Truth is, the Fiesta Bowl's cheering for the Cowboys in Bedlam.
All right. Hey, thanks for joining us on the press row, and be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.